Hey there, we're here with Ricky. We're supposed to have two guests, but we're down to zero guests. So now Ricky has some things he's got to say, he wants to say.
Well, it's not things that I want to say. It's more of a conversation that I'd like to have. And there's certain conversations that are easier to have with certain people. Yeah.
Yeah.
And a conversation, it's funny, a conversation that I feel I was put on this earth to have are religious conversations. Conversations not only about what someone says they believe, but based on their actions, right? Their works, right? What does that say? What does that reflect about their belief system? And of course, we can talk about what is the practical value of a belief system. That could be fun. Um, but I think one of the wounds that humanity is suffering right now is a religious wound. It's like we're not sure. It's almost taboo to believe in anything.
Hmm.
And so I think what I experience in people's approach to astrology specifically, what is always there underlying whatever astrology they're talking about is a belief system, whether that belief system is conscious or unconscious. It's always there at the root of how anyone practices astrology. So I think based on that, culturally, whatever your belief system is going to change how you experience, how you understand, how you use astrology. And that's so what I've noticed is I grew up in a very Christian household, and my mom's mom was a minister, my dad's mom was a minister. So it's all around me, and literally growing up in the church. And I've been teaching astrology for a couple of years now. And a few months ago, several months ago, my mom started joining the classes. And she's zipped by everyone. You know? And I think it's because she has a religious foundation. So she has a framework that allows her to understand at least the way that I talk about or think about astrology naturally. It's like she just gets it, you know? And I think it's because I think the people that are going to get the most out of the type of astrology I do too, people that are wrestling with these questions, because only when you start wrestling with these questions does it dawn on you that I need help. There must be some there must be a purpose to this. There must be a reason for this. And this need to have faith and believe that this is meaningful. Right? That's
Hmm.
that's necessary, right? It's necessary for survival. And I think if it's unconscious, then we end up it gets projected onto politics, etc. And
Well,
Carl Jung talked about this a lot when talking about Nietzsche's favorite quote about God is dead.
hmm. Well, I think people who have a concept of God under their belt have an existential philosophy background of looking at the philosophy of existence and why are we here and what is our calling and what is God calling us to do and how do we live our best, biggest soul life and how to repair angst and sin and mistakes and I think that is a lot of the astrological muscle is if someone goes through a hard transit, how do you repair the mistakes that happen through the transit? Or how do we, get our existence, walking perfectly along those transits or whatever? So I think there is a lot of strength in being spiritual and then becoming an astrologer.
Well, I mean, to me, that's understated. I'm saying in this day and age, to be an astrologer, I think you have to be religious. And we're all religious, meaning we all have a belief system underneath. And so what I'm saying is I think in this age, in this day and age, in order to be a good astrologer, it's you're benefited by having some kind of clarity about an origin story, a creation story, and a religious view. Otherwise, it's unconsciously determining the way you use astrology. And I just don't think you can get the most out of it.
Well, I
And
think we could
even
look at it. How would an atheist view astrology?
well, I would say that well, I'd say that most people who are atheists, I think most people are atheists. Okay? And I'm not talking about people that claim that say they go to church or they believe in this or they believe in that. Because to me, the evidence of someone's religion is by their behavior. So if someone, when the shit hits the fan, right, they quit or they give up, they don't look up and ask for meaning, right, then they're atheists. And when I say that is you can be a believer one day and you can be an atheist the next. But to me, true faith is it's not the only time, right? We give thanks when things are going well, but true faith is when things are difficult. We don't panic. We look up, right? And people that do that in my book, right, those are religious people. People who don't do that in my book, those are atheists. And to me, that's most people. And I don't blame them because there's not much out there that someone who truly needs to believe in something, there's not much out there that's worthy of our belief system, especially in a scientific age. And I think this is the magic of astrology because it allows us to have both. It allows us to develop a belief system, but we have the tools now to check our answers, to validate it, to use what we've learned through science to validate the purpose and the meaning of things.
Well, I think an atheist, I love what you're saying. I think an atheist could look at it mechanistically, like in the machine, the computer program that is the planets, or, like we could say that the planets act on your cell salts and all this kind of stuff. And they look at it more like a machine, whereas the religious astrologers look at it more as, like you were saying, the planets are gods, or, they look at it more in some ways philosophically or more. I like that. Look up to the heavens, right? Like that's like heaven is up there, the planets are up there. It's that I like look up and grow forward kind of mentality.
Exactly. And so it's like when shit hits the fan, what do people look up to? Okay, that's giving you, and we can say atheism, but I don't think it's possible to be an atheist because we all believe in something, whether it's the machine, whether it's the president, whether it's the political party, whether it's this God or that God. You can tell, right, when shit hits the fan, where do we look, right? Also, where do we look? But we can also see, where do we point the finger?
Oh, wow, yeah. I point the finger right at the planets and get angry. Everyone thinks I love the planets, but not always.
Yeah, perfect. See, now we're talking. But even in this conversation, right, and we both have Christian backgrounds, mixed in with other stuff. But I can hear, right? I can hear your religious culture in the way you think about meaning, purpose, astrology. And so for me, it's like if we can take a magnifying glass and look inside and get a sense of what is the belief system, right, that lies underneath the way that I live, because it's going to be the same belief system that lies underneath the way that we think about and use astrology.
Interesting. Well, I actually grew up with an atheist dad. He's an astrophysicist. And so he looks at the planets in numbers and temperatures and in a way that, no offense to the astrophysicists, but they don't look at the planets philosophically per se, right? He's a Capricorn sun with a Gemini moon. And he's just, and his son's in the ninth house. He's like this Capricorn professor, and so it's like, I think it's interesting, like you and I have water moons, right? And so we have this more philosophical, emotional bent to whatever we do. And so it's like, I think, I actually read the Bible in ancient Greek and taught myself Christianity. I did not grow up with it, but my Pisces moon needs it, like, because I can feel people's auras all over the place. I'm like, God, why? Like, I don't know, But yeah, I think different charts have a different propensity to look at the planets from different lenses.
Yeah, but it's funny. But like my my sun in the ninth conjunct Jupiter and Gemini, it's like it's funny, right? On one hand, I 100% agree, okay? But on the other hand, right, and I'm not saying it's true, I'm kind of laughing at myself. On the other hand, I have zero doubt that the planets represent gods. And again, I'm not saying I'm accurate, but the evidence that I use is that the names that we use to refer to them are names of gods.
Absolutely.
We can say that there's a propensity, depending on the chart, of a way to look at the chart, to look at the planets, but I would say there's a propensity of the way to look at God, right? To look at the point of creation, the point of our own individual creation. And I know for some people, these questions can be uncomfortable because the answers aren't easy and they don't show right up, and they can make us uncomfortable because they make us question everything. And we need to have something to hold on to believe.
Well,
I
wasn't that
think,
the fight with astrology? Was like the Christians would say there's one God, there's not multiple gods, and that this God, this actual highest divine source, is above all those gods of planets. That's why, like, I actually have this weird view where I'm like, God is above the whole clock and all the planets, and then there's the GAWDs, like the gods, like of the oh my God, it's Mars or like whatever. But the
yeah.
thing it's all a framework philosophically, but the reason that having one God above all those gods is like, what do we do when these gods are still problematic? And like, what gives?
So it to me it's connected to what I said earlier that we're in a time because I think sometimes we lose sight of the fact that we're in a big cycle of evolution, right? That we've come somewhere, we've evolved to this point, and if things keep going the way they have been, we're going to keep evolving, right? And so like a belief system. Oh, right, this is my belief system. It allows me to make sense of things. And as an astrologer, right, it makes sense to me to track some kind of evolution through astrological means. And the largest cycles that I feel comfortable working with are the cycles of the ages. The age of Gemini, age of Taurus, age of Aries, age of Pisces. And if we track through the ages, when astrology popped up, is right when we got to the age of Pisces, it's like the names of the gods stop evolving because, like you said, I think the whole point of the age of Pisces was to get for humanity had evolved to the point where they could start to appreciate one God, right? And that's part of the story, right? And we would say that's necessary for the Pisces stuff to work, right? And that's what it brought. And then I said, now, right, we have science now. Okay, and I think science came out of the shadow side of the age of Pisces, which I can say the shadow side, but after the age of Pisces is the age of Aquarius. So we need these alternating perspectives in humanity. That's what drives growth. So we needed the one God, okay, but now we see in the age of Aquarius, I would say it was preparation for us to really appreciate and get the most out of astrology. And it's hard for me to see the distinction between the one God and all of the gods, because the only way to get to the one God is through the other gods.